Hello, welcome to the Climbing Consciousness. Today I want to talk about death. A lot of us are morbidly afraid of death. The word itself can't even be uttered without a certain chill going around and a certain feeling of uneasiness by everybody. And yet, it's the one thing that is certain to happen to every single one of us. I wonder if that's why we're all so afraid of it. Because it's the only thing that is inevitable for every single living human being. But to live an entire life afraid of the inevitable happening of death is really a shame. It's a shame because it just takes a lot out of you to be afraid in general. And it's very obvious why we're afraid to die. It's really the scariest thing to think about. Because we have no concept of what it could be like. We have no concept of what it is. We have no concept of how it will feel. We have no concept of what it even means. Because we only know what it's like to be alive. So how could we possibly know what it's like to not be alive? It boggles the imagination, it boggles the mind. It cannot really be prepared for. It certainly can be prepared for in the way that you live a spiritual life, you live in awareness that it will one day happen. Yes, you can reduce your anxiety of one day meeting your end, but I think just like you can never truly prepare for a sporting event or for an exam, you can never prepare for it exactly like it will be. When that first play starts in the game, when the first question hits you on the test, there's always the unpredictability. It's always the feeling of being thrown into the fire. And death is the ultimate being thrown into the fire. It's the ultimate falling off the edge of the waterfall. It's the ultimate frontier. Even beyond space exploration, I think facing death is an even more significant frontier to face because it's so abstract. It's the end of this. It's the end of everything we know. It's the end of every memory we've had. It's the end of... It's like the last page of a story. But it happens to everybody. It happens to everything. Just as inevitable as life is going to be created, that life ends. So can we learn to live to accept death? Can we learn to live to look at death with different eyes? Instead of never ever bringing up this inevitable event that all of us will one day face. Instead of shuddering at the word of it. Anytime you hear of anyone dying, it is the dinner table shuts down. There's a glance by somebody saying, we don't talk about this. Can we learn to live without that? Can we learn to just to talk about it? Can we learn to accept it more. It is a very tricky situation. But I feel in a lot of ways, by examining what death really is and just looking at it straight and acknowledging, yes, I am a human being, I was born, I am alive, and I will die. I feel it reduces the anxiety built up against ignoring that situation for as long as you can. Because if you're living an entire life trying to further and further ignore what is sure to happen, then you're going to end up living kind of in a hole. You're going to dig your own hole. And that's where we see people who live an entire lifetime just saving up for retirement, living an entire lifetime just making sure that they have certain things at certain periods of time. It's really a big, elongated life of hiding from an inevitable happening. What if you lived a life and you acknowledged that life is simply life? It's not my life, it's not your life, it's not his life, it's not her life. I am experiencing life. I was born, I am alive, and I will die. And that is life. What if you lived a life like that? And you had that in the back of your mind for everything you do, every job you take, every friend you meet, every action you make. It would be a lot different. It would be a lot more free. And it would be a lot less constrained. There would be a lot less fear. And I think in a lot of ways, sadly, a lot of people, their biggest barrier is their morbid fear to die. And they practically kill themselves trying to not die. And this is where you have extreme medication, extreme therapeutic, taking 10 different pills a day to cure 20 different diseases that most likely you don't even have. Practically killing yourself to stay alive, the ultimate oxymoron. And there's something very limiting about being morbidly afraid of death. And I think what it tends to do is it keeps you trapped in time. Because when you are morbidly afraid of death, the inevitable happening that happens to every creature of life, you are so stuck in this period of time that you have. Because to you, you are not looking at it like, I was born, I'm alive, I will die. You're looking at it like, I'm alive, I must stay alive, like a death grip. And when you're doing that, the time that you have here, you're hanging on to it. You are holding it and thereby wasting it. Time spent under tension is a lot of time and energy wasted. And time becomes a lot more real, and it becomes your master when you are morbidly afraid of death. When you're morbidly afraid of inevitable happenings, you grip time like it's everything you have. Because it feels like it is. Because you know that this fleeting time here will end. And it will. So what if you can accept that the time will end for you one day? Because there's something kind of miraculous, a miraculous way to look about this, and it's very simple, and it's this. If death is not a thing in your mind to worry about or have anxiety about, time disappears. Time is completely eternal if you simply get your own personal death out of your mind. If there was no death, then there would be no time. Time only exists if you are wrapped in the idea of your own coming death. If there was no death, if you knew today, if someone came up to you and told you, congratulations, you are eternal, you're immortal, you have every single day of the rest of time, you've been chosen, you've been selected, time would disappear. Because you would have immeasurable time. You would never have a death. Time would cease to exist. Well, guess what? That's how reality is now. There is no time at all. There's no such thing as a condensed version of the reality we're all experiencing at all. It only exists when we make it exist. It only exists when you or I has a thought down the road and we create a little world for ourselves here, avoiding that inevitable thing that's down the road, thus condensing this moment, thus condensing this reality to our own personal world. So really, the knowledge of death can either serve as a dictator in your life, or it can serve as an ultimate freedom in your life. The morbid fear of it can absolutely constrict you, and it can see you go through an entire life in an attempt to avoid it. By accepting that death is a natural occurrence, and accepting it as part of life, you're truly free in a lot of ways. You're truly free of being constricted of time. You're free of going to all lengths possible to preserve your life. And it opens a lot of doors. And I think it serves a person well to openly speak about dying, about death, just as openly as we speak about birth. I feel it might be more advantageous to celebrate death almost as we celebrate birth. Because when you do that, you celebrate life as a cycle. We're very one-sided in our society. We celebrate birth as if it is the miracle that it is, and then we shy away from death. We don't talk about death, and deluding ourselves in the process, because we're forgetting that life is a cycle that continues forever. And we get stuck in the illusion that, no, it's my life and his life and her life, and it's just life. And it runs through all of us, and it's a cycle. And by looking at death with the same eyes that one looks at birth, there's a lot to be gained.